So far in the course, you've seen an overview of the Pi system and a discussion of kind of what AF is and how it can be used, how it interacts with client tools and pulls data together from multiple systems. And we're to the part of the course where we're going to start learning how to actually build elements to represent assets and add attributes to those elements to hold the data for the assets. But before we proceed with that, I want to pause for a moment and discuss some of the different aspects of building models in AF, just so it's in the back of your mind as we proceed throughout the course. And before you really start building a model for your own system, you might want to come back and revisit this video just to keep these different ideas about how to approach AF modeling in mind. If we're thinking about a sort of hierarchical model, there's two obvious choices that come to mind for that. We can start at the bottom level and work our way up the hierarchy till we get to the top, or we can start at the top of the hierarchy and work our way down till we get to the bottom. So let's discuss the bottom-up approach first. In that type of approach, we would just jump right in, start modeling our various types of equipment assets and assigning all the data to them. So let me jump to another database has kind of a complex structure, this new green one. Let me expand this out until we get to the equipment level, and you can see, we've built out a boiler and it has a lot of different data associated with it. And then we templatized that and we were able to start generating other boilers. And then we did the same for cooling fans and heaters and compressors and pumps. And so, quite rapidly through AF templatization, we can start generating a whole lot of asset models with a lot of different data pulled in. And this is really nice to be able to organize all this data around our assets. But the problem with this approach is it lacks a vision. So we have a lot of assets with a lot of data, and other than the benefit of having organized our data and making it easier to find and use, we're not really sure where we're going to go from there to really find our added value. One thing you may notice is that a lot of these have some attributes in common, and so if we just jumped in and started building all these different equipment templates out without really thinking through it first, we may have wasted some time by specifying the same attributes over and over for different equipment, and now we've made it so we can't really compare across different types of equipment for like attributes. But if we had done a little planning, I'm going to jump into the library here, and this one was actually done this way. We can see that if we built a base unit template with everything that these various types of equipment have in common, and then branched out from there and started making individual derived templates from the unit template, we could save ourselves some time by not having to specify all these for every different type of equipment. And then we also have this set of common attributes that we can compare all the different equipment on. So the other approach would be the opposite of bottom up, and that's obviously top down. From there we might start at like our enterprise level and then go to a plant level. And you see we're going to specify some very high level KPIs here, like our energy savings targets, environmental targets, quality targets, reliability targets. And here we just have some pi tags feeding the actual measurements, but in reality those would probably be some kind of complex KPI calculation. And we know if we want to get these, we're probably going to need some input from the lower levels, so probably some similar KPIs at the process level. And then to feed those, we would need information from all of our different assets. And so with that in mind, we could kind of plan our template inheritance for these various assets. And we could plan out what types of data we want in order to feed the calculations like these KPIs at the higher level. And then, jumping up to even the plant level, we have all the same sort of KPI targets here. And so this top-down approach has really minor disadvantages compared to bottom-up. It can get, for complex hierarchies or large structures, you can spend a lot of time in theoretical discussions about how you're going to organize these hierarchies, and you may not even know where you're going to get all the data for some kind of complex KPI calculation. And so you don't want to get too bogged down in those theoretical details and prevent yourself from getting down to the real work of specifying all the different data that you have for your assets. So a good approach is usually kind of a middle ground where we spend some time sketching out this hierarchy, getting an idea of how we might want to do some template inheritance so that we have a like set of attributes across as many pieces of equipment as possible, and thinking about some of these calculations and if there's any data that we would need from lower levels to feed into those, what types of things we need at the equipment level, but also going ahead and including other available pieces of data for our equipment and not ignoring those that aren't needed for the calculations, because those can often be found to be useful later for some other monitoring purpose or some kind of new initiative, such as efficiency initiative or an environmental initiative. And so if you go ahead and build as much data as you can into these from the start, then you have it available when you want to try and make new calculations later. So a good general approach would just to kind of figure out what assets you have and think about how you're going to templatize those, and if you can build an inheritance tree for those. And we'll discuss more about template inheritance later, so that should become a little more clear what I'm talking about. And then start to define your attributes for your assets, thinking about some of the attributes you might need for higher level calculations. And go ahead and configure all those attributes. And then you can start really adding in your calculations and your analytics to flesh those out and start finding the value in your system. And then once you have a good set of attributes and calculations built up, go ahead and move on to your client tools and see how you can make some reports or some sort of displays that can utilize all this new information that you've built into your AF model. And one last thing I want to mention is I want to warn against a common misconception about AF. Oftentimes people see something like this new green model that we freely distribute as an example, and they think, oh wow, I have to have this huge all-encompassing enterprise-wide structure with highly detailed assets with a lot of attributes before I can really start using AF and getting value out of it. And it seems like a very daunting task. They think about the two hardest parts of the two different approaches. From the top-down level, they think, well, I have to have the full hierarchy before I can really put this to use. And they think from the bottom-up level, well, I have to have all the different data associated with my assets before I can really get going. But I want to go ahead and put your mind at ease, hopefully, and let you know that, the modeling approach we discussed, you can sketch out a plan from a higher level, and you don't necessarily have to start at the very top. You could start maybe just at the process level, or start with a particular equipment class. For example, if we knew that our boilers are key to the performance of our process and very much wrapped up in the profitability of our process, then we might want to start just modeling out our boilers, figuring out how we can add visibility to the boilers and find some new calculations to improve boiler efficiency, and then go ahead and find value there by using AF to improve our boiler performance. And from there, we could expand to another asset class. Maybe we want to look at our fans next or our heaters next. And then we can start building up to our cracking process. We know that we have some calculations that we want to use to improve overall process performance. And we start small and build our way out, all the time keeping our higher level plan in mind. The key here is that you can start with something small like a certain asset class or a certain subsystem within your plant, and go ahead and build out your model for that particular subsystem or class of asset. Start finding your key indicators and building them into the reports and displays that you're generating with the client tools, and start seeing some improvement in your process there. So the idea that you have to have a fully finished, all-encompassing model within AF in order to start finding value is really not true. And the truth is, if you're innovating, then your AF model is probably never fully, quote, finished, because you're always finding new ways to improve it and add on to it. That's one of the beautiful things about AF, is it's very flexible and very configurable, and you can always add new pieces or change pieces around or add new calculations and make it more and more useful as time goes on. So don't be intimidated by something like this new green database. This is something that you might build up to eventually, but you don't have to start with from the very beginning.